In a remote corner of Russia, a convoy of prisoners moves toward a state prison. During the journey, they stop at a gas station where the guards give them only a few minutes to relieve themselves. Among the prisoners, a young man with a skull tattoo on his neck stands out. When everyone returns to the vehicle, they notice the absence of inmate 864. A guard goes out to look for him and finds him laughing sarcastically, warning him that he was lucky not to freeze or end up in the wolf's jaws. The prisoner returns in silence. Upon arriving at the prison, the newcomer is greeted with insults. Each inmate is assigned a cell and a few personal items. The young tattooed man encounters a cellmate who makes it clear he hates sharing space. The newcomer coldly replies that he doesn't plan to stay long. When told that the previous occupant didn't survive even a month, the young man says he intends to stay only 3 days. If forced to extend his stay, he'll use his fists to settle it. The other inmate asks if they'll at least eat together. The answer is a resounding no. One day, while the young man is working out in the common area, 2 bullies try to kick him out. He demands they be quiet and move away. When they refuse, they attack, and he defends himself with fury. Though he maintains his pride, the guards intervene and take him to Sergei, the prison boss, a famous mobster who, even behind bars, runs his empire. In this brief confrontation, Sergei provokes him, and the young man confirms that he knows all his crimes. Intrigued, Sergei demands to know who he is. The prisoner, without beating around the bush, identifies himself as Craven, the hunter of men. He immediately dispatches Sergei and his henchmen in lethal fashion. Having achieved his goal, Craven escapes thanks to superhuman abilities, dodging bullets and scaling walls with ease. His cellmate, amid laughter, remembers that he only stayed 3 days, just as he promised. Craven heads into a freezing storm and reaches an airplane, where he tears off the tattoo from his neck. Shortly after, prison staff discover the identity of the person Craven had impersonated. 16 years earlier, in a boarding school in the United States, Sergei and his younger brother Dimitri are informed that their father, Nikolai, will be picking them up. After so long without seeing him, they're both puzzled by his sudden arrival. Inside the limousine, the conversation is brief and curt. Nikolai coldly explains that their mother has died and states that because she was weak, she doesn't deserve a funeral. Sergei and Dimitri are shaken, but their father insists that a hunter fears nothing and that they're there to be forged as such. Meanwhile, in northern Tanzania, Calypso, a young woman with the gift of tarot, briefly chats with her grandmother. Her grandmother insists the cards are not a game, but a means to glimpse the future. Calypso draws 3 cards that predict danger and receives from her grandmother a potion that will grant her special abilities when the time is right. Not far away, Nikolai hunts with Sergei, who shows greater strength. Dimitri, more sensitive, feels troubled. Nikolai repeats that they must be hunters and not prey, demonstrating his ruthlessness. That night, Dimitri expresses his distress to Sergei, both missing their mother. Nikolai drinks with his men and mocks Dimitri, considering him illegitimate. The group prepares to hunt the mythical Tsar's lion. The next morning, Alexis, another hunter, proposes a partnership with Nikolai, who scorns him. Dimitri just wants it all to end quickly so he can go home. When the lion finally appears, Nikolai shoots and wounds it. Enraged, the animal drags Sergei away. Calypso and her parents witness the scene. To save him, the young woman uses her potion. Sergei dies in the hospital but revives a few minutes later, which the doctor deems a miracle. Nikolai, far from being moved, berates Sergei for not having killed the lion. In the hospital room, Sergei finds his mother's last letter, where she asks forgiveness for leaving him. Suddenly, Nikolai imitates her voice, revealing an unsettling ability. He tells Sergei that Dimitri will return to the United States while he stays to lead the family business, insisting he not be weak like his mother. Nikolai then reveals the lion's corpse as a trophy. Furious, Sergei realizes his destiny upon seeing a falcon land on the windowsill and decides to flee. First, he takes money, his passport, the tarot card, and Calypso's potion. While escaping, he falls from a great height without injury. Dimitri feels betrayed and demands that he leave, to which Sergei replies with apologies, promising to return. At a port, Sergei convinces a captain to take him to Russia, where he wanders through forested areas. There, the buffalo don't attack him, and one even protects him. Sergei arrives at his mother's cabin, now in ruins, and spends the night under a tree. The next day, he crafts a spear and is amazed at his new abilities when he tries to hunt. But he's distracted upon hearing hunters who kill jackals just for their horns. Sergei eliminates them mercilessly. In the present, Sergei, now Craven, finally arrives in Russia to claim another target and bids farewell to the person who helped him travel. He fishes quietly until he receives a message from Dimitri, who imitates their father's voice to mock him. Later, Craven surprises a group of hunters and disarms them. Their leader calls his boss and mentions they were delayed by a lunatic. At that moment, Craven appears and confirms the criminal's identity, Andre Lavena, whom he executes with a crossbow. In New York, Calypso learns that her friend Samantha, an honest lawyer, was murdered by Sergei crony. During the funeral, Calypso denounces a system that lets criminals go unpunished while the innocent die. From a distance, Craven watches. Once it's over, he approaches and offers his condolences. He reveals that he killed the murderer of her friend and shows her the tarot card she'd given him years ago to save his life. Calypso is astonished to see he found it almost 20 years later, and he replies that he's a hunter and now needs her help. Their conversation is brief. Craven explains he uses the name in honor of his profession, and Calypso admits she practiced law in New York but now lives in London. He shows her a list of nearly impossible targets to locate and says he may need her collaboration. She, cautious, agrees to consider it and urges him to protect those he loves. Elsewhere, Alexei the rhino is playing with his dog. An employee informs him that the hunter killed a partner. Alexei already knows and explains that anyone on Craven's list ends up dead sooner or later. He arranges a meeting with Sergei crony's former allies. At the gathering, Alexei confirms that he's now in charge, and after the others scoff, injects himself with a serum that hardens his skin like a rhinoceros's hide, repelling bullets. Only one trafficker survives, having killed the others, earning the privilege of becoming Alexei's partner. Meanwhile, at a mobster's bar, Dimitri is singing, imitating the voice of a famous performer. Alexei's new partner meets with Nikolai, who boasts that Dimitri is a chameleon, capable of taking on any voice. Dimitri sings to liven up the evening. Nikolai informs him that the mobster's boss died in prison and offers protection, but the trafficker deceives him and tries to kill him. Nikolai's men react and kill everyone. Enraged, Nikolai calls Dimitri a coward for not fighting, saying he doesn't need a singer but a fighter. Alexei learns that the plan to eliminate Nikolai has failed and looks for another way to defeat him. His people analyze a video of the hunter and deduce he's Nikolai's son. To stop him, they decide to contact the stranger, a lethal assassin whose mentor was killed by Craven. When the stranger arrives at another Russian prison, he's immediately restrained, but he subdues the guard in 3 seconds, leaving him lifeless. Meanwhile, Sergei visits Dimitri on his birthday. Dimitri, who hates being belittled, drinks excessively. Then Nikolai arrives with expensive wine and proposes a toast to the reunited family. Later, Sergei helps Dimitri back to his apartment. Drunk, he confesses his frustration at failing to meet their father's expectations and asks Sergei to improve their relationship. That night, Sergei can't sleep and spends hours in a park. When he returns, he finds signs of a struggle. Dimitri has been kidnapped. All his attempts to track Dimitri fail, so he turns to Calypso, who promises to contact someone who can help. Sergei also visits his father, asking if he knows who's behind the kidnapping. Nikolai says he doesn't and won't lift a finger to pay a ransom. Suddenly, a box arrives with one of Dimitri's fingers. Furious, Sergei demands that his father pay the 20 million. Nikolai refuses, saying that giving in would show weakness and that killing Dimitri from the start would have prevented this problem. Sergei leaves in anger. Dimitri regains consciousness. His captor beats him until he agrees to take antibiotics. Calypso, for her part, obtains clues from a contact, but the stranger crosses paths with him and kills him. Craven locates one of the people responsible for the kidnapping and forces him to talk. The man confesses that the rhino is running the show and that they're both doomed. Suddenly, a missile destroys the area. The mercenaries look for Craven's body among the rubble, but he survives and kills them all. He calls Calypso and tells her to flee the country. He'll send a trusted pilot for her. Alexei reflects on his past. He suffered abuse from his father and turned to the chemist Miles Warren to create the serum that turned him into a hide-armored monster. Now he plans to take revenge on his father. But he needs an ally, Nikolai. The two meet, and Alexei proposes teaming up to eliminate Craven's father. Dimitri, held captive by Alexei, refuses to betray his family. Alexei's plan is interrupted when the stranger bursts in and kills everyone in the room, declaring that he'll hunt Craven for revenge. Meanwhile, Craven and Calypso reach Sergei's mother's old house. A leopard approaches without showing aggression. Calypso reviews the unsuccessful attempts to recreate the potion and warns Sergei that his luck won't last forever. Elsewhere, the stranger shows Alexei a weapon designed to kill Craven. When Alexei contacts Craven, he suggests a truce, but Craven refuses. Alexei orders his men to capture him. Craven uses their own weapons to eliminate them. Then the stranger injects Craven with a serum that causes terrifying visions. He's about to finish him off, but Calypso surprises him with a deadly arrow. Craven, on the brink of death, once again receives the life-saving potion. Revived, He attacks the rhino. The battle is intense. The mutated Alexei seems invincible, but Craven exploits his weaknesses. In the end, he defeats him and demands to know who leaked the prison video. Dying, Alexei admits he watched it all and did nothing to stop it. Dimitri tries to kill him, but Craven stops him, reminding him not to let hatred consume him. The rhino dies, lamenting the path he took. In northern Russia, Nikolai sleeps. He senses Sergei's presence, who confronts him about teaming up with the rhino to kill him. Nikolai confirms he always knew Sergei was his biological son, a perfect weapon, and that sacrificing Dimitri didn't matter. He proposes rebuilding the family, but Craven refuses. Suddenly, a bear appears. Sergei lets it in, and the beast devours Nikolai. A year later, Sergei celebrates Dimitri's birthday, finally at peace. He feels like a new man and mentions that a doctor helped him rebuild his life. Nikolai's former henchmen now serve Dimitri, who observes that he and his father were more alike than they cared to admit. Before leaving, he demonstrates his chameleon abilities by changing his face in front of Sergei and mentions that his father left him a gift. Back at Nikolai's mansion, the father's final legacy is revealed. He does not regret anything, but admits he is proud of his son. Then Craven dons his lion vest, thus closing the story.